Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this new record from the Offspring, entitled Supercharged. They released that on October 11th. This is the 11th studio album for the seminal California punk rockers, and their follow-up to 2021's Let the Bad Times Roll. And I might argue that this new record should be called Battery at 20%. As a longtime fan of this band, these last two records are so disappointing that I might argue that there's really no reason for these guys to continue making new music. But that's okay. This is an outfit that in its time has left an indelible footprint on the music landscape. Their 94 classic Smash is still the highest grossing independent album release of all time. If you jump on Wikipedia, you'll read a number that says 11 million plus copies sold worldwide. That's a reference from 2007. So I think even despite streaming services, that number has certainly taken a bump over the years. And that record, along with Green Day's Dookie that year, pushed punk rock to the forefront of popular music, forever changing its trajectory, for better or for worse, depending on your opinion. When I listen to this new record, Supercharged, there's very little that I hear that I found captivating and inspiring about the Offspring when I first started listening to them. Their first two records, their self-titled debut and Ignition, just solid, up-tempo, urgent, melodic punk rock. But more important, you can feel these guys carving out their own identity on those records. Dexter Holland's voice has always been one of a kind. From the moment I heard him sing, I just found him to be brilliant. And the same thing with Noodles. The influence that he takes from Eastern music on some of his guitar riffs, I think are his best. And especially on a song like Tehran early on their self-titled debut, you can really feel that element giving their sound its unique quality. And so an album like Smash, I feel like that's when this band is coming into its identity. You know, 2 albums in, and now you got this guy. And there's so much going on that record. The Eastern influence, on songs like Genocide and on the radio-friendly Come Out and Play. You have a band that really plays around with an alternative rock sound very well, I think, on that record. Songs like Self-Esteem and Gotta Get Away are classics as well. And there's influences of ska and so many other things driving that album. It really deserved all the accolades and all the attention that it got. And then they moved to Columbia. You get Exnay on the Umbre, which, I really felt it had about the same quality as Smash. I feel like moving to Columbia and, being around at that time, being a teenager, there was this whole, they're selling out. And I feel that could have been a detriment to that record. But overall, it did very well. And the same thing with Americana. But what I would argue with Americana is that's where you start to see the slide. You start to see the quirkiness, the playfulness on some tracks, and I'll highlight Come Out and Play. It's got kind of a playful element to it that makes it accessible, in my opinion. But there's just certain tracks on Americana where I feel like the goofiness and the poppiness of their sound started to work to a detriment. And, there's a big difference between making punk rock popular and making pop punk. And I think that in a lot of ways, Americana signaled the shift of them getting into this pop punk territory. There's albums like Conspiracy of One, Splinter, Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace, not records that I listen to a lot, but going back and checking them out, there's still a lot of that old school, just solid Offspring flair on those albums that I would argue it makes them worth listening to. It makes them worth revisiting, right? But, as far as days go by and then that big gap and, these 2 records that follow, they've just fallen off so hard for me. And it kind of makes sense. And I place that on Dexter Holland. Not that he's a bad guy. He's actually a fantastic dude, really smart. He's got a freaking PhD in molecular biology from USC, for Christ's sake. That was a big part of the reason that there was that gap, that downtime. And if you're familiar with this band, you know that back in 1995, he put his education on hold to pursue this band. And I think that was a good decision on his part. But I just feel like there's a lack of interest in the music these days. I don't feel like he's quite as in love with creating music as he once was. And I'd argue that there's a disconnect. There are lyrics and there are songs like, I'll go back to Smash, Nitro Youth Energy, deep cuts like Something to Believe in, Not the One. A song like Smash, I'm not a trendy asshole, do what I want, do what I feel like. I'm not a trendy asshole. Don't give a fuck if it's good enough for you. That's not the Dexter Holland that we see today. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think that while they put on an amazing high energy live show as well, and I might even encourage any of you who have not seen the band live to go check them out. It's still worth the ticket price, I think. But for me personally, having seen them a couple of times already and knowing that some of this newer music is going to be worked into the set list, it's lost on me. I feel no desire to invest a whole lot into this band's future, whether it's albums or live shows. There's fond memories to reflect on. I think that's the great thing about music, unlike an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend. You can go back, dig out those classic records, and remember the good old days, the good times. Versus letting the bad times roll, I'd rather listen to this band and let the good times roll. But I want to get into this track list. Looking out for number 1 is your album opener. My goodness. Twinkly electronic elements are going to open up driving bass and this nasally vocal. And it was so funny. I have a new roommate. He came home the other night about halfway through this record. And he was like, oh, Offspring. And he sits down, he takes a second, and he's just like, this is new. And he's like, why is Dexter's voice so nasally? And then a few seconds later, it's just like, I don't like this at all. And it was so funny watching his reaction because from the moment I listened to this opening track, I was just lost. The intro is questionable. I mean, the chorus finds a solid punk groove. It's going to maintain light pop flair though, pretty much from start to finish. Noodles does his thing on a solo. It's great, but that's one of the things that I think is missing so much on this record. That Eastern influence and just solid guitar solos in general are gone. And you can tell that, I'm not sure what's going on with the band dynamic, but it really doesn't feel like Dexter Holland is throwing off many ideas to the rest of his bandmates, including his longtime friend and the longest bandmate that's been there with him, Noodles. But this album opener, I'm just going to say it is trash. I do not like this song at all. And it's just awful, frankly, flat out. Second track, Light It Up, we're getting better. This is more like it. Got driving percussion, punk rock guitars, got this chugging up-tempo riff that drives, so I really enjoyed that about the song. The Noodles riff midway, you're getting a little bit of that Eastern feel, but that's pretty much it. It's going to show up on one other song, I think, and, it's Light It Up is definitely the highlight of this record. It comes early. I feel like there's really no reason to dig any further deep into this collection of songs because it just starts to fall off bad. The Fall Guy, driving percussion, spaced out rhythm guitars, fill in as this song progresses. The vocal melodies and the production, a little more favorable for me, but just so nasally still. I just don't know what Dexter is doing with his voice on this record. Make It Right is your 4th song. I wish you guys would one day. I wish you guys would make this right for putting out these 2 records. Lo-fi drums, and you got a female vocal hook to open up. Big pop punk love song is going to drive the flair of this thing. It's mid-tempo, trades the woes for bops, bop, 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 bop. And they used to be, this is a song that showcases how they used to be witty, and now they're just annoying, in my opinion. I don't think that they're funny or, even like the sardonic feel of the stuff. And I would argue going back to classic albums, things off Smash, things off Ignition, Dexter's writing from a viewpoint that is, he's focusing on negative things, but there's this idea that, given the community of punk rock, and that's what I always loved about punk rock, is showing up to shows and feeling camaraderie, feeling this sense of being a part of something bigger than that's you. And that's what's so captivating and so fun about punk rock. And especially for younger people, I feel like you get a lot of outcasts that are drawn together and they're able to find something where they belong. And that's so important. And this is just a song where you can feel that it's fallen off for Dexter, in my opinion. This is a highlight of that. Okay, but This Is the Last Time is your 5th track. Just when it couldn't get any worse, it's like they're trying to be back on TRL in the 90s, in the late 90s with this thing. An awful song. If I could give it negative stars, if that was a possibility, I totally would. Truth and Fiction. Thank God. You're going to start the B-side on this thing with driving punk rock. It's contrasted with light vocal melodies, which, again, that's always been a big part of good punk rock music. The Dead Kennedys, the Descendants, like some of these raw, hardcore outfits still created very melodic music. The hook is average though on this song. It's hard to take, when you fired, I'm talking about Pete Parada on this thing. This is kind of like one of the political tracks on this record. And, given everything that we can look back on, the firing of Pete Parada, not even giving him a chance to. I mean, he joined the band back in the early 2010s. He was featured on just a handful of songs of Days Go By, which Josh Freese did most of the drumming on that record, which the fact that they got a guy that talented to even play on such a shit record is mind-boggling to me. Like, I don't know why that guy agreed to play on that album. I think it goes back to what I was talking about to open this thing up. There's definitely just a veneration for Dexter and the boys for what they did early on. But, I remember feeling bad for guys like Ron Welty, Greg Kay, more recently. They're better off. They're better off not being in this rock band. And I feel that, honestly, the absence of guys like them is why the music has taken the direction that it has and why it is so bad. Get Some. Or no, excuse me. I missed one of the most offensive songs. Your 7th track, Come to Brazil. 80s hair metal to open. You get a little noodle solo. It's going to usher in this big chugging riff. The lyrics are reminiscent of hair metal. I mean, I appreciate them trying to do something different and play around. But again, just a garbage song, in my opinion. I'm glad people down in Brazil love them, though. I'm glad that they have the money and that they can just go down there and tour anytime they want to. It must be freaking nice. No longer grounded in the blue-collar punk sentiment, the punk aesthetic, the punk community. It's just so frustrating. Get Some is your 8th song, grungy hair metal style to open. Driving bass backs a solid riff. They sample Kansas on this thing. I don't know how they didn't get away with not having to put down. There's no credits to Kansas on that, and it is obviously the guitar sample from Carry On the Wayward Son. Bugs me too. Hanging by a Thread is your 9th and penultimate track. Cymbals introduce big instrumentation in the intro. Vocal with a simple guitar and bass drum. It moves back and forth with a bit, and then it goes to work. You get a little bit of that signature Eastern influence on this song as well. But again, it's pretty much absent from the record, which is such a disappointment. And then your final track, You Can't Get There From Here. Wavy guitar ushers in light mid-tempo alternative rock. Music drops to focus on the vocal. Music slowly builds, and it's going to fill out in the chorus. This is a song. This is the last thing I want to talk about. The level of ball tickling from critics. I cannot believe the amount of reviews that I read after listening to this record that were like, the Offspring, getting back to what they do, getting back to their unique sound. And one asshole even said that this last song reminded him of The Who circa Tommy. Like, pardon my French, but what the actual fuck are you talking about, dude? I can't remember your name, but take that opinion and throw it in the trash. Along with this record, you guys, this is such a vinyl pass. I'm giving this thing 2.5 out of 10 stars. I would encourage you to just ignore this thing. Don't even listen to it, even at 10 songs and 32 minutes. I mean, if you want to like titillate your morbid curiosity, because I know that I like to do that from time to time, I'd say that is probably the only reason to go for it and to listen to this record. But as far as I'm concerned, it disappoints me to end up basically having to do a hit piece on a band that I've always thought of as one of my favorites, but this album really is bad. I hope you find this review helpful. Please don't listen to this album, but please tune into the Beat Sessions throughout the week for more album reviews. Please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And tune in to Classic Wax on Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.